Yeah, welcome to another episode of the Racer X Exhaust Podcast. Enjoy your Monday morning. Gonna grab a cup of coffee. Now I have the Racer X tumbler, and we're gonna hang out with Ryan Dungey again after a great round 3 of Monster Energy Supercross. By the way, you can get one of these Racer X tumbler coffee mugs. Subscribe to the magazine. The cool thing is, see these magazine covers behind me? Everything we put in the magazine, that's different content than what we put on the website for free. But we know that you probably want to use your phone to access stories just as much as a print magazine. So what we do is we put all the magazine stuff on our website, but you do have to be a subscriber to read all of it. But it's only $30 a year, and we'll give you this for free, so it's pretty darn cheap. Go to racerxonline.com/Weege. Also, thanks to our sponsors, we'll get into them more at depth in a bit. But of course, it's Yoshimura. Go to yoshimura-rd.com to get an exhaust system for your motorcycle or your side-by-side or your street bike. Wide variety of stuff there. Also brought to you by Leatt. Go to Leatt, Leatt.com to find out about their full line of protective wear, helmets, goggles, riding gear, knee braces, boots, and neck braces, covering you from head to toe for moto and mountain bike. And new, we've added OnTrack Schools, the K-12 distance learning school for students who are on the go. Go to ontrackschool.com and $100 off your registration fee. Just type in RX22 as your code when you check out. We'll have more on our sponsors in a moment, but let's get with Ryan Dungey, talk about round 3 of Monster Energy AMA Supercross from San Diego. But first, the theme song. Podcast. 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 Podcast, 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 podcast. Okay, we are joined by Ryan Dungey once again. I hate to say it, sorry, I got a Racer X tumbler now. We're giving away with subscriptions. It is RD coffee in there. Sorry, bro.
Hey, as long as it's RD coffee, we're good.
Okay. We have to keep doing these because round 3, wow, this is shocking. Okay, the first 2 rounds, we often see weird stuff happen, weird winners you don't expect. But by round 3, I always say that people are starting to, they've got their bikes figured out. They're not nervous anymore. For Chase Sexton and also to me, Jason Anderson, to be this good against this field, I was super impressed with that. What's your takeaway, first of all, obviously, on Sexton winning? And at one point, Eli Tomac was in second, and Eli couldn't make a run at him. It was impressive.
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of time till Chase won. I think we all knew that the speed was there. He showed that Anaheim won. I had a feeling when you could just see when he got into that lead, he just took it away from Marvin. He was like, I'm going to go for it right now. He was hungry. So he took off and dropped the hammer. And yeah, I was kind of surprised. Tomac, he kind of dropped off the rear wheel a little bit, but it's still early. And overall, I think Tomac's, playing the long run here. So.
Well, yeah, you and I were just joking about the points here before we started this. This is nuts. How Tomac is the points leader and how up and down this has been. This is crazy.
I know. And I was looking at the points, just thinking and like you had said at Kenny, in a normal year, he'd be 20, 30 points down and you'd be digging yourself out of a hole. And to think that these guys are within 5 points, the top 5, and then the point standing and looking at their finishes, typical year, it's definitely changing the game a little bit, how we look at this thing.
2015, what did you win? The 5th round? You didn't win till round 5, something like that?
Right.
Like that. So is it possible for a guy like Eli to be like, okay, and he admitted he wasn't the fastest guy on Saturday night. He knows that. Maybe he was the 3rd fastest. Not bad by any means. Is it okay in the first couple of rounds to be like, all right, I haven't had the blazing speed yet, but as long as I'm good and consistent, I'm good with points, that's fine? Is it okay?
Yeah, I think in Tomac's case, he's getting better every weekend. And you can see that his starts were getting better. He was put himself in a better position. And the fact that he has the red plate, now he knows he just, all right, now he needs to start winning these races. He's right there. He's in a good spot. If I was Tomac, I'd be happy with where I'm at.
So Anderson, this is crazy. Again, the first 2 rounds, he was really good. Sometimes I write that off and just say, hey, that's the way it goes. But that was impressive. He went through a lot of fast guys.
Yeah, and that was the thing that we didn't really get to see. Once he got into second place, he started kind of closing that gap on Chase. So it would have been nice to see how that would have played out. And like we talked last week, and he's coming off all this momentum. he's coming through the pack. This would have been one more thing, another momentum builder for him. Granted, I think him knowing like, okay, he had it, he could have possibly got to he at least would have had second. But knowing where he sits, I'd feel pretty confident still, but that would have been a huge momentum booster for him, even if he could have capped that off.
Man, okay, you see him going by these guys in the whoops. Were you surprised? I mean, Anderson's always been fast, but this was next level.
No, he was coming through. I mean, in this year with how stacked things are and how hard that track was to pass. When I watched that track, when I was watching practice, I was thinking it's going to be a tough track to make these passes. Kind of like Anaheim, you're going to have to really take the line from these guys. But he came through the pack. I don't remember where he started, but the fact that he was picking guys off, coming through, I just like, seriously. I mean, his lap times were. I mean, I honestly wonder if he might have got up to Chase. I mean, he was closing that gap pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, we'll never know if he would have caught him.
Yeah.
But you're trying to win your first race. If you're Sexton, I would imagine that would have changed the situation. At least he would have been feeling more pressure. And then who knows, right? That would have been a big factor, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the lead and you see a guy closing on you, you start, okay, well, you start kind of getting in your head, like, where do I got to pick up time? You kind of start sweating it a little bit. So if you can, that's why you always want to keep the pressure on the guy ahead of you, just to keep them, keep pushing them, hopefully pushing him into a mistake. But anyway, yeah, we won't know how that played out, but Anderson, heck of a ride. And if he can continue that performance week in and week out, I mean, he's right there in the points too. So it's not, I mean, these guys are all right there in the points. It's like starting over pretty much.
That's right. Yeah, it's almost like they're all tied. Okay, so Anderson has a bike problem. I believe what we're hearing, it's either like a radiator cap or something with the radiator. I think coolant was coming out.
Okay.
Can you just talk about being kind of like on the fly mechanic? The main thing you're trying to worry about is, I hope my bike doesn't die on a jump. So you're trying to process all this. I'm sure you've been in this situation. Talk about trying to figure out as much as you can, as quickly as you can, to manage the situation while you're racing. And you can't really see. You can look down at the bike, but what is that experience like?
I thought about that, and I putting myself in his position. If I seen smoke, I would associate that with radiator fluid or oil, getting out of the engine, burning. I probably would have kept doing all the jumps. I know that's, it's everybody would approach this different. You could see Jason, he started like, okay, I'm not going to do the big jumps because I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what's going to happen. Is the bike going to blow up? But as long as the bike was running fine and you saw smoke, just knowing how I was, and I probably would have kept doing all the jumps. Now if it started getting luggish and doggy and started to feel like it was going to lock up, then that's the point I would have but it's such a chance, you really don't know what can happen. You don't know. So you just got to be prepared for it. But he definitely played it safe, managed the bike. And, I think at that point he was trying to limit the risk for himself, but also manage the bike.
Do you have a race you remember where you were like, you heard something or saw something with your bike and you were actually trying to race, but also analyze the motorcycle? Like, were you in that situation?
Nothing that comes to mind.
Okay.
But
we remember you like shifting in the air, but a bench shifter is obvious, right? Like it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is like and there's no sense of risking in practice, but the one time I can think of, I was out at Ricky's farm, and it was 2010, and I was doing a 40-minute moto. It was practice. And all of a sudden my bike it started getting really loud, more from the engine. Should I have pulled off and like, it's practice, don't risk it. But I kept going because it felt fine. But then realizing afterwards the silencer, the muffler cracked. And so that's where the noise was coming from. So you just got to weigh it out, and, and being in those positions where I was at, I probably would have kept doing all the jumps. And granted, if the bike was feeling good and the power delivery was good and it wasn't cutting out.
Quick break here from our Monday morning chat with Ryan Dungey. I want to mention Yoshimura, Yoshimura-RD.com. That's the exhaust system used by the likes of race winner Chase Sexton, and also near race winner Hunter Lawrence. Also Ken Roxon, who won Anaheim 1. They use Yoshimura on the factory Honda HRC team. Go to Yoshimura-RD.com and find an exhaust system. Also, this podcast brought to you by OnTrack School, the K-12 distance learning school for students who are on the go. Chase your dreams and blaze your trails with nothing holding you back. There are no limits to what you can do when the classroom is where and when you make it. OnTrack School makes it easy to be flexible with personalized education that happens at your own pace. pursue your dreams and your education with OnTrack. So after the episode, go to ontrackschool.com and use the code RX22 to save $100 on your registration fee. And different people ride for different reasons, yet there is a common denominator that binds everyone who puts their body on the line for the sheer enjoyment of it, and that's what Leatt offers as a brand. They make protective wear, helmets, goggles, riding gear, knee braces, boots, and neck braces, covering riders from head to toe for both moto and mountain bike. But what Leatt really stands for is the promise of things to come, because they are in the business of making sure that you have the confidence and the equipment to push yourself faster and harder and further than you thought you could. Go to leatt.com, Leatt.com. All right, so thanks to OnTrack School, Yoshimura, and Leatt, and of course Racer X. Back to Ryan Dungey. It's crazy. People go like nuts on the, oh man, the team, they let him down and all that. Look, everybody's been in these bad luck situations. How do you feel like as like a leader of your team, you need to react when you come in? Because if you start pointing fingers, especially by round 3, it's probably not going to go well. So did you have to sometimes, ease up on those guys a little bit? Because they're obviously going to be super bummed also.
I think if it was a one-time scenario, hey, we all make mistakes. We all, granted it was something simple, or if it wasn't, maybe if it was the mechanic's fault. I don't really know what happened, so I can't really say to that. But yeah, just say, hey man, we all make mistakes. I've had, sometimes they've left my choke on going out on the race back when we had carburetors. I had a mechanic leave the choke on, and it was like, these aren't big deals. And you guys gotta, and they already know, you don't gotta beat them up even more. They're gonna be hard on themselves. The whole team is, for that matter, that this doesn't happen again. But if it continues to happen, then that's another story. But these one-off deals, it's dirt bike racing. I mean, there's so many things there's so many parts to a dirt bike that can, it happens. It's a machine.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna hit you with this. So the whoops have been crazy at these first 3 rounds. We talked early in the season. Did you normally expect the track to not be that gnarly early in the year? Are you a little surprised to see that these have been 3 brutal whoop sections at the first 2 rounds? Is that a surprise to you?
It's surprising. It is really, because the 2 things that tend to happen with big whoops is you get a lot of crashes, and then you tend to take out your top, there's more chances. The good guys can prevail and get through them better. I think as you kind of go back into the C practice, the B, you see they struggle more. But I'm a little bit surprised. I always think like a good whoop section is something everybody should be able to get through. It should be challenging, but it shouldn't be like, all or nothing. It's hard because practice, they start off much bigger because they build them up bigger, and then they break down as they go. And I think after the first time practice, they ended up kind of shaving them off a little bit from what I could tell, because they got better. So I think they knew, but that's a little bit of a long-winded answer. But I think like as challenging as they have been, it's a little risky for just the series as a whole for all the riders.
Well, you answered by just saying it's not what we expect. It's kind of different for the beginning of the year. So here's what I'm getting at. So both Sexton and Roczen were saying they're really struggling in the whoops. And it's weird because, they had this bike all last year. So what we've kind of learned now is they didn't have to race on whoops like this last year, especially because we didn't really have West Coast races at all. So the dirt was different. And we had like those Atlanta Speedway races had gnarly whoops, but that was really late in the year. And then it was like too late to fix it. So what we're seeing is I think teams have been caught by surprise a little bit, because man, whoops haven't been that gnarly in Supercross for a long time. You've probably seen it evolve. I think some people were hit by surprise by this, because they probably didn't think they'd had to test for whoops that were this big. Do you think some people might have been caught out? Because we haven't seen whoops like this in a while.
I think so. Especially Anaheim 1. Those things were monstrous. And the other thing that's challenging on the West Coast is that, and especially for the main event the other night in San Diego, is that they get edges and the dirt gets harder and the moisture comes up. So when your tire hits that edge, it's more prone to start stepping out. And like Chase, second to last lap, almost lost the rear. It's just like it catches you off guard. So I think with the dirt, it makes it even more challenging on the West Coast.
Yep, that's exactly. And they didn't have any West Coast races last year, so everyone's notebook is a little empty there. Okay, look, Chase Sexton, we kind of knew he was probably going to win at some point. We know his riding style is awesome. His speed in qualifying is awesome. You were once the young kid coming up. Then you were the guy trying to hold the young kids off. Do you remember times where you would see somebody on the Dartfish or even look at their lap times and be like, wow, that's that's something new. Maybe I need to learn from that when the new kids bring a new technique in. Is that something that you saw in your career?
Yeah, for sure. I think you can pick up stuff from anybody, but I will say when I watch Chase, um, and the fact that he's got a win now, it's a little bit dangerous for the guys. I think, I feel now he's got that first one, if he can bring that consistency. But when I watch Chase, he does things so effortlessly and flawless on a dirt bike, things that his corner speed, the way he rolls through a corner, there's no notchiness. He carries that momentum through the whole corner. He carries the momentum around the whole track. He makes everything look just effortlessly. And so he just got that natural ability too. He's got long legs, so he's good in the whoops, and he does things really well. And I think if I was a lot of the other guys, I was just already thinking, some of those guys, I'd watch his corner speed. If you can carry that momentum through the middle of the corner, that you have, let's say you have, 20 corners on a track, and you can put gain a tenth on every corner. That's 2 seconds. Now you're going to gain 2 seconds, but you can gain a lot of time within the corner. So, and I think that's where he does an exceptional job. That's where he makes up a lot of time too.
Well, wait, wasn't that old Ryan Dungey? Wasn't that young Ryan Dungey, old school? Wasn't that what they said about you?
Yeah. And that's the thing I always tried to work on when my corners started getting notchy, or it's, and we talked about this even last year, and Ricky taught me that. I don't know if he learned this from car racing or if he actually applied it to racing. I'm assuming he learned it from racing, but he just told me one day at the practice track, dude, just roll through the middle of your turns. Like quit like trying to get on the gas too hard, quit braking, just roll through the middle of the turns. And I did that. And it's like, I watched the lap time drop. It was unbelievable. And that's where Chase does a really good job.
To me, what would be hard about that is your instinct probably is to go faster. You have to ride harder. And you're actually saying it's resisting that a little bit makes a difference.
Yeah. Give up a little bit coming into the corner. Sometimes you feel like you got to bomb it in the corner, and sometimes you can, because the dirt's so good and it's loamy and tacky, but other times you give up a little bit coming in. So you're not, you don't load the suspension, carry it through the middle of the turn, and the bike stays relaxed and you're gaining time. It's good. It's a good win-win.
Hey, I'm glad you mentioned the tacky dirt. San Diego looked a little bit more slippery, but we were talking to Will Hahn, who works with the Troy Lee Designs team now. A lot of the 250 kids have been crashing all over the place, and he thinks when you get tackier dirt, and Oakland and Anaheim won, their dirt was tacky. He says sometimes it almost tricks you into hanging it out too much, because you can keep pushing it. You're like, got away with that. Let's try to go even harder. Yeah. What do you think of that? Like, does it almost lull you into pushing too hard when you know that you have traction?
Yeah, the tires stick a little bit more, and for sure, you're definitely prone. You have more confidence to push harder, but that goes back to, like anything, your limit is your limit, and you start you put down a really good time, and you're trying to, you feel like that was a really good lap, and now you're like going to try to get even more out of that. That's where you're like you're flirting with the comfort zone. So getting out of your comfort zone and prone to make a mistake. So, you watch these guys put in the 450 or whatever class it is, they put down this great lap time, they make it look effortless. They hit all their marks great. And then now they're trying to go out there and one up that. And you're like, that's where it gets a little sketchy. And even that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about was, when we watch these qualifiers, these guys are within a second. And the time and the effort that they're putting out, the one thing that I had noticed, if I was a racer, I'd be confident in, it's some of it translates to the race, but some of it's not translating to the race. Like there's a difference when you can go, put in a lap time, but can you run that lap time for 20 minutes? Right. So It's kind of interesting. I was thinking as a racer, I'd be kind of sweating it. When I was watching Anaheim 1, I'm like watching these guys are with all in a second, the top 15. I was just like, this is crazy. But it's not translating to the race. It's almost like who gets a good start, who positions themselves better, limiting the mistakes. It's that speed isn't carrying over to the main event, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think also, okay, you've been on these racetracks, so the track, I'm sure, is the difference between a track being fresh and a track being hammered. I'm assuming most of the time in qualifying, it's fresher than it would be in the main event, right? So it's not quite apples to apples comparing those laps, right?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
Okay.
they're not as tore up, I would say, but they're still pretty rough and rutted. It's
Mhm.
just the matter of it's like, I mean, think about it. I got to do one hard lap. That's the
Okay.
effort I got to put out. That's what I got to do. Now think of, okay, now I got to do 20 minutes of hard laps. You know, that pace is going to be different. A sprint versus
So that's
longevity.
a bigger difference than the track changing. The difference literally is, so there is, okay, when you watch first couple laps of a 450 main, it looks like everybody is going all out. They're definitely not cruising. But
Yeah.
you're saying there is like a percentage or two where you're like, I got to do this for 20 minutes. Maybe I'm leaving 1% less than that qualifying lap. There is a difference.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of effort you could put out for one lap versus 20 minutes, it's going to be a little bit different for
Yeah.
everybody. That's the case. But I don't want to, I'm not saying that these guys aren't, it's more that from a racing perspective point of view, if I was sitting 10th on the board
Yep.
qualifying,
Yep.
I guess what I was saying, I'm not going to stress on it so much because it's a totally different game when you're going racing, getting a good start. I think that's more the speed and what they're going. I mean, these guys are pushing the limits without a doubt. It's just more so that as a confidence mentally, I wouldn't overanalyze the qualifying too much. Got to be
Wasn't
there,
it?
but you don't have
Yep.
to be at the top. You know what I mean?
I see. So if you come in and you feel like you're good and you feel like your bike's good and you're eighth, you're not worried about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't it also a thing for a while where you guys were starting to chase not the best lap, but how close your laps could be? Like the percentage of all of my laps were within 98%, like they were within 2% of my fastest with the Lit Pro and stuff like that. Wasn't like a thing that people started to chase the consistency as opposed to the one hot lap?
Yeah. Yeah. When we were doing it, the goal was to, yeah, get on top of the board. That was the goal.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to put one fast lap, put like three laps in
Hmm.
that same window. And that was a good indicator that was a good pace you were going to run for the 20-minute main, the main event.
Right.
Um, but it's, and I don't get me wrong, being at the top of board, that's a huge confidence booster. If you can do that, like be there, that's going to be nice little boost going into the main event. So definitely that's the goal, but also not to stress on it too much.
I really can't place where you were. Like some guys we know as like great qualifying guys, and then some guys are like, oh, he's always bad in qualifying and better in the races. What did you think of yourself? Did you think of yourself as like, oh, I get better in the race, or were you a good qualifying guy? I don't really have a. I don't know. Where did you think of yourself in that?
I just always remember if I didn't see my number in the top 5 of
Okay.
that pylon in the middle of the track, I'd be, what the heck's going on? Just kind of stressing. But no, I was decent. I feel like I got better,
Hmm.
especially towards the end of my career. I feel like I did a better job with my sprints, but I just always, in my mind, if I was going to put that lap, if that was my lap I was doing in the time qualifying, that was something I always felt like I was going to be able to do that every single lap. So that's kind of where my confidence came from. Like I could push that pace in the main.
Yeah. I want to know. Okay, your qualifying lap. Is it literally like I would get tired if I rode that hard for 20 minutes? Like, is that a factor also?
Um, no. So
Okay.
the thing that we did, and this is just was our program,
Hmm.
and I felt like with working with Eldon and having Jason, Marvin, Zach, we would chase each other where we were basically our effort that we would practice at. I mean, we would come out of the gate strong, like we were racing, and because Eldon was like, he could see the heart rate, he could tell if we were kind of milking it a little bit because our heart rate would gradually grow up instead of going up like a tabletop.
Okay.
And so he could tell like you have more effort to give us out. So for us, it was like, it's 20 minutes and you got to, I mean, we trained ourselves to push ourselves to the, that full 20 minutes really hard. But I always felt like when it came down to race scenario, my mentality was get out of the gate strong, get the start, drop the hammer for really sprint for, call it 5-10 laps, like really, really push it hard. And then by that time, you kind of, maybe you have a gap, maybe you don't. But if you have a gap, you can kind of manage it a little bit, chill out a little. But if you don't, well, you have the fitness to if that guy's really on your, your tail and you got to really keep pushing it, you have it in the tank to keep pushing.
So you guys could get fit enough to basically, if you had to, you could throw down almost qualifying effort for 20 minutes. That would you could get
It's
there close.
slightly below, but pretty
Right.
close.
Yeah. I mean, that's the crazy part. I mean, I think everybody knows the difference between like running a 100-yard dash and going for like a 5-mile jog. It's not even close to the same. It's not even close to the same. But you guys are getting fairly close to the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
These guys, I mean, that window is getting, yeah, it's pretty impressive. Everybody's doing the work. Everybody's fit. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Anything else standing out that that you're seeing right now? Good, bad, tracks, bikes, riders, anything like that?
I don't know. I think I just keep going back to there's so many guys out there.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing, but tough competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to think there's a little challenge to, just like you said, you can't be eighth in qualifying and get discouraged with that. I've got to think the same thing with the results too. Like the guys got to keep their head in the game. If you finish sixth, that's normally for guys at some level, that's a terrible night. But maybe right now they've got to say to themselves, I'm not going to get as mad about a sixth as I would in a normal year.
You'd have to think. I mean, there's got to be a little bit of looking at the standings and how things are playing out. But I will say, if I'm one of these guys, I'm like, if you can start putting yourself in that front, get a good position off the gate, like consistently every time, and start consistently winning or right there on the podium. I mean, yeah, that's going to be a good spot to be. So that's where I'd be aiming for if I was, a contender.
Right. Okay. All right.
Start cleaning up the consistency.
Yeah, it's tough. And you know what, though? Every year starts out crazy and it somehow narrows down. It doesn't seem possible. Like, it doesn't seem possible looking at this field to think like, it's going to come down to 2 or 3 guys for the title. Somehow that actually happens. I don't know how. It doesn't look possible right now.
Yeah. I know. It's making me rethink everything. So I can't.
But I think you're echoing the last thing here, what everybody's saying. Sexton now getting this win. It really could change things that he's finally got that win under his belt.
Yeah. It definitely could. And it's all these factors, but yeah, he's hungry. He's new to the game. It's a second year. You get that first taste of victory. Now he believes you can do it. We talked about that last weekend, but it's a momentum thing. It's confidence. And a lot of this, you hear it all the time, but physically it's a big deal to be fit and everything, and the bike to be, but mentally, it's a big mental game right now, I would say, more than anything.
Yeah. There's not much left on the table anywhere else. It's this group. Pretty exciting. All right, we'll keep chatting. We'll keep watching, and I guess we'll just keep hoping the racing remains this good, right?
Yeah, it's been wild, but been fun as a spectator. That's for sure.
That's right. All right. Well, hey, cup of coffee with Ryan Dungey.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. We'll catch up again, and thanks for the time.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.